In this video, it's all about handles. We've got our 5 integral blades and they need 5 handles fit up, and then they need 5 handles to be shaped so they're not just a big block with a blade sticking out. I went ahead and picked out 5 handle materials for our 5 integrals, and I've got 3 of them actually fitted to the blades so far. We still have 2 left to do, and that's the 2 carbon fiber handles. Those are gonna be the most difficult to fit up just because the broaches and the drill bits and all that stuff just don't like cutting the carbon fiber, especially the broaching when we go to clean out the slot for the tangs. The first handle fit up I did is a piece of dyed and stabilized curly maple, and it's got this really beautiful purple color. I think it's gonna look really nice. The second piece I fit up is a piece of artificial ivory. This is something I've never used before, but I wanted to try it out. It looks really, really close to the real thing, and just wanted to see how it looked on a knife. It's even got a grain on the end of it that looks just like elephant ivory or similar to mammoth ivory, and the colors are spot on. For the third knife, we've got a piece of black ash that's been dyed and stabilized, this really dark, beautiful blue color, and it's got tons of beautiful wood grain in it. And then for our final 2, we've got 2 different types of carbon fiber. They're both the same like pattern, but one is denser with more layers than the other. So I thought it'd be fun to use 2 different ones and kind of see how they look on the finished knife. On the finished knife, I'm guessing they're gonna look very similar. I've got an angle marked on the end of my carbon fiber. The first step I need to do is go grind away the material until I get to my line so that we can get this block angled properly, how it is actually gonna fit up. Right now, it would just fit up straight like this, and I need it to angle down like this on the blade. So I just got done with the layout on the end of the handle. We can go over and start drilling out for the tang next. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Knife Maker Plus. Knife Maker Plus is a monthly membership that will help you level up your knife making every single month. So check out the link in the description. I'm getting the carbon fiber block all mounted up in the milling machine. We've got a little point here. We drew our lines with a pencil on the end of the block earlier, so I've got a good guideline to go by for what the center is, and I just need to line this up with the line in the center of the block, and then we can start drilling out with, I think I'm gonna use a 200 thousandths drill bit, which is just about the same thickness as my tang. This carbon fiber is really hard on broaches, and in the past I've had to make specialized like carbide ones in order to scrape out the inside. The one I have though is way too big, and I don't really want to make another one, so I tried to do as much as I could with the drill bit to get the tang to fit. And right now the tang only needs to go about a ½ inch more. I am going to use this jigsaw blade broach just to try to get it to go a little bit further, and we'll see what this does. It'll probably destroy it right away, but it might be able to eat away just enough material to where I'll get that to fit in there the rest of the way we need to go. I got done drilling and broaching out the hole for the tang slot, and it looks really nice. It took me quite a while though. I had to mess with it a lot because this carbon fiber is really nasty to work with. Thankfully, I had really good pencil marks to go by. I had a nice layout to be able to get that hole centered up. Since it's the end of the day, I want to stop working on this and at least get a couple of these handles set in epoxy. Because if I don't do that right now, I'll have to do it tomorrow morning, and then after that, I'll have nothing to do for the rest of the day because I'll be waiting for epoxy to set up. But if I can go ahead and get 2 or 3 of these set in epoxy, that means all day tomorrow, I'll be able to shape handles once I get this final fit up done. And it's only like 20 minutes away from being fit up, I think. To set these handles in epoxy, we are going to coat the tang in Vaseline and then use West System epoxy. And I'm gonna use clamps and or rubber bands to hold the blades tight against the blocks of wood. Stick epoxy in there, put them in there, let them dry for about 4 hours or so, and then I'll take them out, put them back in to make sure the epoxy doesn't fully set on the tang, and let them cure overnight after that. Mixing up the West System epoxy. Got these special pumps because it has to be the perfect ratio. It's not a 1-to-1, it's like a 1-to-4 or something, I don't remember, 1-to-5. These pumps measure it out perfectly. It's not like your regular 2-part epoxy. We got the tangs covered in Vaseline. We can go ahead and epoxy our first handle together. Clean off a little bit of this excess epoxy here. I put Vaseline around the bolster as well, just so I don't have to worry about cleaning it off. Now I'm gonna try something I've never done before, but I think I've seen a couple guys do. And that is to hold the handle on with rubber bands. My rubber bands are a little dry rot, so hopefully they don't break in my face. All right, that one should be good to go. We'll let it set for about 4 hours, and then I'll pull it apart, clean stuff up a little bit, and then put it back together and let it cure overnight. The reason I take it apart after a couple hours and put it back together is just in case there's any weird low spots or something in the tang. I wanna catch the epoxy before it's fully hardened and make sure I can get my handle off. All right, I got one more that I wanna get done tonight, so I'll have handles to shape tomorrow, and then we can glue up more of them tomorrow morning. I let the epoxy cure for about 5 hours, which was a little too long because I had a really hard time getting these handles off. I probably should have let it go 3.5, 4 hours. Turns out that hour made a big difference. Plus the temperature was just right, I guess, to help the epoxy set up really quickly. On 2 of them, I used a little bit of heat right around the bolster area. Not enough to even color the steel, but just enough to help get the handles off a little bit. And then I had to use a sledgehammer with these blades clamped in the vise and bang them off. It was a big challenge. It was pretty hard, but it still only took me about a half an hour or so to get all 3 blades off. And now we have all 3 of these blades set in epoxy. So now the blades go into the handle in the exact same spot every time, and it's like a perfect glove tight fit. There's no wobbling or wiggling or anything. So now as I work on the rest of the handle, I'll know that handle goes on there in the exact same place every time as I work on the handle, which is really nice. The next thing I need to do is get these other 2 carbon fiber handled knives bedded in epoxy. But I still have to do a little bit more fit up on this one. The blade fits pretty far in there, but it needs to go about a 1/16 further. So I'm gonna work on the fit up. So we've got that little tiny gap between the bolster and the handle material. And I think what's causing it right now is the very base of this tang flares out lightly around the edges. So I'm gonna clean that up with a Dremel tool, get rid of that flared out edge. And I'm also gonna relieve material up around the tang. And pretty much the only place I want this bolster to hit is on the outside edge. That'll make it much easier to get everything fitting nice and tight. So I'm gonna cover this with Sharpie and then use the Dremel tool to remove material around the tang and get rid of that little bit of a flare that's around the tang as well. You can see the area on the bolster that I relieved with the Dremel tool. So now this little bit of black line on the very outside edge, that should be the only place that the handle material rubs, and that's the only thing we'll really have to focus on getting to fit up nice and tight. The blade makes contact with the handle material now, but I do have some little gaps I need to work on, so I need to lightly sand on the end of this handle material until the bolster is touching all the way around. After messing around with the handle for a bit, I was finally able to get a perfect fit between the handle material and the front bolster without any daylight shining through. I then bed the carbon fiber handles in epoxy to get a glove-tight fit. Hopefully I don't forget about the handles because I need to take them off again after about 3 or 4 hours before the epoxy has cured all the way. Dad brought over a bunch of poppets left over from 4th of July and wanted to see what they do on the press, so we've got like 100 of them lined up on there. It is time for an explosion break. Whoa! Whoa! Oh, they're flat. Whoa!
Do it again, do it again.
The first thing I want to do when it comes to shaping this handle is to get everything nice and parallel. So I'm just going to use the height gauge here. I've already got it set. I can describe a line across here, and then I will flip the blade over. Try not to drop it. And then scribe a line on this other side. This line will probably taper a little bit from the front to the back just because the blade has a distal taper and I'm holding the blade down on something flat. Also, when I flip it over and do this side, I'm going to lower this, or raise this rather, by 100 thousandths because the blade has an aggressive grind on it. So this isn't gonna be like an exact perfect layout, but it's gonna really help me at least square up the block. Because now you can kind of see how the block isn't perfectly straight with the blade. You see the line is close to the edge over here and a little further over here. So the front of the handle is a little over an inch, and then there is about 80, 90 thousandths of an inch of taper. That's perfectly fine. What we're shooting for here though is for the top and bottom of the handle to be about the same. So right here I'm reading about 60, and over here I'm reading about 70 thousandths, so that's close enough for this. Another thing we can check to make sure the handle's coming out centered with the blade. As long as your blade is straight, you can do this anyway. That's just to lay it on a flat surface. Scratch a little line in something with the tip, flip the handle over the other side, and see if the tip scratches in the same place. And in this case it does, so we're ready to move on to the next thing, and that's gonna be to get the profile roughed in, because right now it's just a big old block and we want to profile the handle. I don't normally make a pattern like this for shaping the profile of the handle, but since I'm doing 5 of these knives, I thought it would save a lot of time to go ahead and make a little pattern. So I've just got a plastic piece here that I've made the rough shape of the handle. It's a little bit oversized to give me some wiggle room. And I'm just gonna line it up on here with the blade and everything and trace around it. I already started drawing it on here one time and decided I wanted to change the positioning just a little bit. So I'm gonna drop the pommel end a little bit more than what I started out with on the first one. Now we can take it over to the bandsaw and cut off a big chunk of this right here and then start shaping the profile on the broadback. I'm done profiling our handle. I left it a little bit oversized from what the pattern was, just ever so slightly. And then the pattern is also lightly oversized. That's because when I go to round all this over, I'll probably inevitably make everything a little bit smaller in that process. The next thing I'm gonna do is scribe some lines on here while we have a nice uniform block. And those will help me keep everything parallel as I do the rest of the handle shaping. Once I've got those scribe lines in, I'm gonna start working on removing some material right through here. Something like that. And then once that's done, we'll come in here and start really putting this cool shaping in here.
These knives are gonna be available when they're finished. They might not last too long, so make sure you're following me on Instagram so you don't miss out when they're available.
So once again, time got away from me a little bit. I don't know how that happens. I wanted to take these handles off after like 3.5, 4 hours. It's been 5 hours. Just like with the other handles, I hope I have a not too hard of a time taking these off. The one thing that might help me out is that it's really humid today, so maybe that epoxy hasn't set up a whole lot. But I'm gonna go ahead and pop these rubber bands off, take the file guide off, take this wood thing off that I don't have a name for, and get these handles off just to make sure we break free from the tang from the epoxy, and then I'll put them back together and let them cure overnight. Ow, ow. Rubber band fight with myself. These are on here very tight. Well, it doesn't come off by hand, that's for sure. It came off and didn't break my tang. That was about 10 times easier than last night, so this hadn't set up as much as last night. Probably the high humidity today. It was still stuck on there a little harder than I prefer though. Probably a good half an hour, maybe 1 hour less time would have been right for the epoxy. But if you take it off where the epoxy is too gooey, I've noticed you get a bad fit up, and in the end you don't get a really nice tight glove fit. There'll be a little bit of slop to it.
I put the carbon fiber handles back together so the epoxy can cure overnight, and then it's back to shaping the blue handled knife.
I'm done shaping the profile of the handle this way and the profile this way. So the next step to do is to start rounding all the corners, because right now everything's really square. So I'm gonna round all the corners, and this handle's really gonna start coming together, and it's actually gonna feel good. Got this one shaped, it's looking really good. I have a nice crisp line right here, right in the center of the handle, and it curves up and comes out at the pommel. It's kind of a little extra work to grind that in and not just have everything rounded, but I think it'll add a lot to the finished look of the knife. So I'm gonna try to keep that line as crisp as I can for hand sanding. And speaking of hand sanding, this knife is ready for hand sanding, this handle rather. Before I hand sand this handle though, I've got 4 more knives that I need to get the handles shaped on, so I've got some serious hours at the grinder ahead of me. Got the handle shaped on 3 of the knives. I only have 2 left to do, and it's the 2 carbon fiber ones. I save these for last because they're gonna be a little bit more difficult to work with. The process is gonna be the same, it's just gonna grind a little bit slower and stuff like that. In the next video, we can focus on getting these handles hand sanded and completely finished up, and move on to etching the blades and finally be able to see how our Damascus pattern looks. I will see you in the next video. May the forge be with you. Bye-bye.